Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is RuneSnow, and today we'll be doing Magic the Gathering top 10 Sprite cards. Not fairies, but sprites. And now, at number 10. We're going to start our list with Sea Sprite from Homelands. It's an uncommon going for just a whopping 16 cents on the market. And this one is at number 10 as well because it's pretty expensive. It costs 2 mana for a 1/1 flying protection from red. So at least it has flying, but protection from red. Oh, well then, as you can predict, it would only be helpful, really, if you're playing against a red deck. If you are, it's pretty gold. If not, well, you got some problems. Now, at number 9, which is actually one of the more expensive sprites, I would say, is Fire Sprite. It's from Legends. It's a common going just for 64 cents on the time of this video. And while it's only expensive, is because it's old school, because right nowadays I would not play this card in any time. Costs 2 mana for this 1/1. As you can see, it has flying, which is typical for any type of sprite, but it costs 1 force to tap to add a red to your mana pool. This ability is played as an interrupt, which of course interrupts don't exist anymore. So again, if you're really desperate for that amount, you only see why this card would be good, and why it's at number 9 as well. It does have that mana abilities other than the protection from red, so it just gives it that 1 up. So let's move on to number 8. We have Cloud Sprite from various sets being common, and well, 12 cents on the market. And it's basically a really cool comment. I like the Mercadian Masks one, so I really gotta put that one up. But anyway, 1 for a 1/1 flyer. Cloud may only block creatures with flying. So 1 for a 1/1 flyer, that's a pretty good deal. That's why I put it at this spot, because that's better than 1 with the non-flying. So let's move on to number 7. At number 7 is basically the same card as Zephyr Sprite from Magic 2010. It's a common going just for 9 cents on the market at the time of this video. 1 for a 1/1 flyer. Nothing more to explain other than like the previous one where it said it can only block creatures with flying. This can, so that's it. Cool picture. I like the saying though. I've never understood why so many beings lumber around on the ground. There are 3 dimensions, yet they use only 2. So let's move on to number 6, which is actually one of my favorite sprites. It's Surveilling Sprite. It's from Ravnica, City of Guilds, or Dual Decks in January versus Nicole Bolas. It's a common going just for 16 cents on the market for a common. It's actually pretty good. So 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer. Pretty typical for a sprite. But it says when it is put into a graveyard from play, you may draw a card. And I am a fan of those drawing additional cards, as I keep saying in all these top 10 legendary videos. So let's move halfway down the list to number 5. We have Hypnotic Sprite from Throne of Eldraine. It's an uncommon, go for 16 cents on the market. And I actually used this quite a bit when it was standard. 2 mana for a 2/1 flyer. Very awesome. But it does cost 3 mana. So it has like 2 abilities in this card, which I was very impressed with. Counter target spell with the converted mana cost of 3 or less for 3 mana. Borderline. This is why it's halfway down our list. So let's move on to number 4. We actually have Inspired Sprite from Morning Tide. It's an uncommon for 18 cents on the market. So it's even less expensive than some of the common cards on this list. And this is actually one of my favorite pictures of all the sprite cards. Has flash, and as you guys know, I'm a big fan of flash as well. 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer because it's a flash, but whenever you play a wizard spell, you may untap Inspired Sprite. And to tap it, draw a card, then discard a card. So it has very multiple abilities. It does have a lot of backfiring because by the time you want to play 4 mana, I assume you won't want to play the sprite card unless you're doing a sprite deck. So let's move on to number 3. We have Sprite Noble from Eternal Masters or Time Spiral, therefore being uncommon or rare as time has gone by. So it's 42 cents currently on the market for the average price. And this one is actually very impressive. Costs 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer. Other creatures controlled with flying get +1 defense. Other creatures controlled with flying get +1/+0 until end of turn if you tap it. So it's very versatile and you really want to build a deck. Again, I said in the previous card, if you want to build a sprite deck, this would be a card you would have to put in 100%. So let's move on to number 2. We have Sprite Dragon from various sets being uncommon with an average price of just under $2. And this one is very cool. If you can somehow keep this card into play, it is actually very playable in the real Magic world. This Sprite Dragon only costs an island and a mountain for a 1/1. Flying and haste. Really cool. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a 1/1/1 counter on Sprite Dragon. So if you can keep that, it's pretty much game over. But there's only one better card than this, the best sprite of them all. So now, at number 1. So, we got Spellstutter Sprite from Modern Masters, or it could be rare, secret layer drop, but it is common, so with an average price of $3.27. And yes, it is a fairy wizard, but I went by the name, so It is a Sprite Fairy Wizard with Flash Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, counter target spell with the converted mana cost of X or less, where X is the number of fairies you control. So you can make a Sprite Fairy deck, and this is very powerful because no one will expect a Sprite to have a counter in it. Like, that's just awesome. That's why I put it at number 1. You can just counter something and no one would expect that. So I hope you guys enjoy the top 10, and I hope you have a good day and a good evening.